I'm Dr. Deb Butler, and you are listening to Thinner Peace in Menopause and Beyond. This is episode number 410. Welcome to Thinner Peace in Menopause and Beyond. This is Dr. Deb Butler, Master Life and Weight Coach, and as always, your coach. If you're a woman and you're smart and you're successful and you've been struggling with weight your whole life, and now menopause is making it harder than ever, and you are ready to make this the last time you ever have to go on a diet again, then this podcast is for you. Stay tuned. Well, hello, all my dear friends all over the world. I cannot believe every time I do an episode now that I am speaking about episode number 400 and something. Today, actually, it's 410 episodes. I seriously have a hard time believing that I've done that. And actually, I have a hard time believing as I get older that I've done a lot of the things that I've done. And hopefully, I hope what you do is what I've been doing, which is when I look at some of the things that I've done, I take a pause and I take a minute and just tell myself, thank you, and what a good job I've done. Because there's so many things that I've done in my life so far, so many things. And a lot of them have come to fruition. And I love seeing the effects, for instance, of raising a little boy into a man. He's almost 40. Oh, he is 40 now. Wow. When I look at him, I just say to myself, good job, mama. Because I was worried that maybe I wasn't doing a good job a lot of the time as I was raising him. Probably you too. And I know many of you are at a stage in your life where if you have children, they may be going off. And some of you may be older like I am. I'm in my 70s now, if I can hardly believe that. And it's been almost 15 years since I started menopause. And I just can't even believe that menopause was such a springboard for me for so many things in my life, so many things. And that's really the good news for you too, is that if you're in the middle of menopause, and I know many of you are, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, if you really know what you want to create, or even if you don't know, you just have this feeling that you just want to do something, I'll tell you what, it's a good time to be thinking about it. Our brains are very, very malleable at this time. And, it's like in adolescence, in early 20s, it's all about what do you want to do with your life? And I kind of think your 50s are sort of very similar to your late teens, early 20s, except the difference is the wisdom that you now have that you did not have at that time in making decisions for yourself about where you want to go. And as I look at my life and I think about where I've come from, and where I am and where I'm going, I cannot tell you how grateful I am that I went through menopause. And it's why I'm here talking to you, is because I like to teach what I needed to learn. And I'm still teaching what I need to learn. When I get on these podcasts, a lot of what I'm talking to you about are things that I'm still learning. But for you and for me, one of the things in menopause seriously was this weight issue. And I know a lot of you have this, think about it, worry about it, obsess about it. And, even when I was going through it, I didn't even realize how obsessed I was about it because it was so much a part of my life and so much of a hobby in my life. I was either on or off a diet for 30 years. And I treated myself differently depending on how I was eating. And I thought about things in a different way depending on how I was eating. And I cannot tell you what a pleasure it is that that is not a thing for me anymore. I weigh pretty much the same all the time, within 2 or 3 pounds. I used to go up 20 and 25 and 30 pounds before I would decide it's time to do something again. And I know for you, it could be 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 100 pounds, whatever that number is. it's really nice when it's not a thing anymore. And all of my podcasts are devoted to making sure that I can teach you to create a life without the weight issue in it, to be able to let it go. And today is really no different, because what I want to talk about today is some of my students that are in my group just ended. It's usually a 12-week group session, and it just ended. And whenever they end, I do get a little sad because I've gotten close to so many of my students, and I've watched them grow so much. I've watched them go through things that they didn't think that they could go through and then come out at the other end smiling. I got to tell you, it's a pleasure. And to know that the process, this thinner piece process that I created, works for all different kinds of people. If you've got a problem with weight and you've been struggling with weight your whole life and you're ready to make this the last time that you ever have to do this again, then I want to make sure that you listen to this podcast and you listen up today, because I want to talk to you especially about one of my students in my group. I'm going to read you a couple letters from her, because the way my groups work is that I usually keep them small, probably within 10 to 20 people. And everybody has the option that they can email me anytime they want about anything that they want to talk about, if they're not comfortable talking about it in the group, or if they have questions in between. And some students take advantage of it. Some don't care as much. It's up to the individual. Some people like to write. Some people don't. Sometimes writing to me is a way of writing to themselves. So I have a few students in this group that like to write and love to work things out with me in between sessions and then actually be coached in a group session. It worked out beautifully for them. And as I'm speaking about this, it's good for you to know that a new group, my doors will be opening up soon in the next couple weeks. So pay attention to your email or go to my website, drdebbutler.com. If you want to find out the exact times of when we're opening it up, prices, all of that and all about it. It's not open yet, so you wouldn't be able to find it yet. But when it's open, you will be able to read all about it. And I'll make sure if you're on my email list, you will get all the details. But today, I just want to kind of give shout outs to this one student especially. And there's more, but I wanted to speak about her today because I know that you'll be able to relate to her. And I think that a lot of people in the group could relate to her, and she could relate to a lot of people in the group. And there is something to be said about group work, because you do get to hear what's going on with other people. And for some people, that is a beautiful thing. For other people, a group thing is not a good thing. Individual is what they like, which is why I offer both individual coaching and group coaching. And the benefits are wonderful either way, depending on how you learn best and what you can financially afford, because the group coaching is at least half the price of individual coaching. So anyway, what I want to talk to you now is about this one student in my group. And she sent me a couple letters. And on our last visit, it is so heartwarming to hear such beautiful stories of how people have come around, of how they see themselves now. And there are certain tools that I think are probably the most important to know and understand. And I think when I tell you about this student, you'll get it a little bit more, and I'll explain it a little bit more, and I'll explain the situation that she's talking about. So let me go ahead and read one of her emails to you, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about her story. So she says, Dr. Deb, oh my goodness, I learned so much by rewatching our coaching sessions each week. I rewind certain parts over and over and have a notebook full of reminders. It's refreshing to hear when one of us hasn't been doing well, and then by the next week, the thought struggle comes full circle. At different stages in this journey with everyone, I've seen myself over and over again with each one. I love all of our ladies in the group. And then she goes on to mention one of the clients and students that are in my group. She mentions her and she says, I've seen myself the most in her. Who knew that the kindness that we show to ourselves makes such a difference? Thank you for helping me unravel my behavior and thought patterns. I can see now how reminding my husband that I'm not going to eat or not eat something doesn't need to happen. I can stay mindful over food and thoughts no matter the situation. And just as a side note, I'm going to go back and tell you about the situation with her husband that she's talking about because I think you'll be able to relate to it. But she finishes the letter by saying, if I sit down and I'm the only one that doesn't have cake or food, it's okay. My grandkids can learn and understand that we all have choices. Grammy isn't hungry because I've eaten earlier or I'm choosing not to have the cake. How freeing. And the situation that she's talking about is that she sent me an email telling me how excited she was that they had a Dairy Queen cake for one of her grandkids for their birthdays. And Dairy Queen cake is her favorite cake. And she didn't eat it, and she didn't even have urges to want it. And she was just so excited to talk about it because she never thought she could control herself around a Dairy Queen cake. And of course now, because of all the work that she's done, she realized it was just her mind that was telling her that she couldn't control herself because she liked the cake so much. And she even went on to say that that Dairy Queen cake is still in her freezer. And she just lets it just be there. She doesn't have urges for it. She doesn't have urges for it anymore because one of the things that we do in our group and one of the tools that I teach about urges is how to use an urge worksheet. In other words, how to figure out what are your thoughts that cause urges and what thoughts do you use to manage urges so that you don't eat something. So for instance, for her, for Dairy Queen cake, the thought that used to create urges for her is, I love Dairy Queen cakes and I can't control myself. That's just what she used all the time. And every time she thought it, she would get hungrier and hungrier to want to eat that cake. And now what she says is that I can enjoy the cake if I want it, but I don't have to eat it. And it's been freeing for her. That's one of them. I call them managing thoughts. Thoughts that you use instead of the old thoughts. Dairy Queen cake itself doesn't create those old unmanaged thoughts anymore. Now she thinks I can have it or not. It's a beautiful place when you can get your brain to, I can eat it or not. And I just don't want it right now. But what she was talking about with her husband that she brought up in the coaching session and then brought it up again in this letter is that she was telling me after she was so proud of herself that she hadn't eaten the cake, that she didn't feel those urges that come from those thoughts because she felt so strong and in control and knew she could, is that she said, but I did tell my husband ahead of time that I wasn't going to eat the cake. Now, when she told me that got my coaching ears up because I said to her, well, why do you even have to tell your husband? And that's when she said to me, it's almost like I needed him to be able to help me if I decided I wanted to eat the cake, that he would remind me. It's almost like she needed him to know ahead of time in case she needed support. And she did not realize that till she told me that thought. She didn't realize that that thought was going to cause problems for her or that she was depending on her husband for something that she didn't have to depend on her husband for, which is why she was saying that if she chose not to eat the cake, her grandkids could think whatever they want. They could see that you could make choices and that it wasn't up to her husband to help her. All she needed was her own commitment. It was really freeing for her when this happened for her, which is why she wrote it in the letter. And in the group, when she came to be coached, really it was just going to be, I was going to use it as a coaching session to talk about how you use your thoughts to manage your urges with the Dairy Queen cake. But really, an old thought popped up and she didn't see it until she told me, which is the beauty of coaching is sometimes you cannot see your own mind, but it freed her even more than not eating the cake, is realizing that she didn't have to depend on anybody. She didn't need her husband's permission one way or the other, and she didn't even need her husband's support. All she needed was her own support, and all she needed to do was to make her own decision. I'm telling you, this last time that we met brought tears to my eyes because there were stories like this all over. I use her because she probably wrote me the most amount of emails during our group time. It's interesting the way everybody has their own way of working. Some people like to work a little bit more on their own. Some people like to work a little bit more with writing and talking to me. And some people just really like to be coached a lot in the group sessions. And some people don't want to be coached at all. They like to watch other people being coached, which is why she was saying in the email how she was watching and rewatching the videos because everyone always gets recordings of each coaching session so they can go over them in their own time. Because when you go back and listen to your own coaching session, you will learn so much more than even when you're coached. It's like a double reward. So these recordings are very, very important. And some people take them more seriously than others. For her, she did a lot of work. She did a lot of note taking. She had a journal filled with notes to herself. She wrote me an email telling me how she's convinced herself that she's beautiful, that she can actually look at herself now and see her own beauty. And not because she's lost weight, even though she has lost weight. It's because she's talked to herself enough that her mind allows her to see her own beauty. Because as I've spoken to you a lot about in the podcast is how we see things isn't really just through our eyes. It's through our brain and then we see things. And her brain has changed so much on how she sees herself. And once again, she's not the only one. And the other thing that I think is really important that she mentioned and that I've seen with so many of my group members is that when they get how to use self-kindness for themselves, it's a game changer. And even though I talk to you a lot about it and I teach it and I talk to them a lot about it, it gets downloaded in their brains in their own time. But if you want to feel better, and I've seen this over and over again, especially in this group, the kinder they learn how to be with themselves, the better they feel and the better they treat themselves. It's a given. And I also had one of my students ask me on one of our last calls was, I'm a little worried about this self-kindness thing. I can see that I certainly feel better when I'm kinder to myself, but do you think it can last? She's worried that if she keeps being kind to herself, she's going to let herself just go. I think a lot of you think that. And what I told her and what I want to tell you is that there is no downside to being kind to yourself, just like there's no downside to being kind to other people. Kindness begets kindness. When you're kind to somebody else, it's almost like you're paying forward your kindness and they're going to pay it forward. It just keeps going and going. When you do it to yourself, that's where all the rewards go. It's paying it forward to yourself with kindness. I want you to think about that. And as I told you, the group doors will be opening very, very soon. So keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and all the details will be coming if this is something that you've wanted to do. I think most of the people in this last group, most of them had been listening to my podcast and had been thinking about doing the group for a while. So if you're one of those people, you've been thinking about it, the only way to get it done is to do it. So if you're thinking about it, if you have this feeling inside of you like this is something that would really help you, because this is how it was for them. They just had a feeling that this was it and they were right. Prove yourself right too. And of course, I would never end this podcast, especially after what I've talked to you about today, to tell you one more time that no matter where you go or who you're with, please, please, please be very, very kind to yourself. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye. If you're loving my podcast and you would like some more information to be able to follow along with, then please go to drdebbutler.com/change, and you can get a free copy of my companion book that goes with this podcast that I refer to in many different episodes. That is drdebbutler.com/change, CHANGE.